Hi students, so we're starting chapter 2 today. We're going to be looking at rational numbers. So let's first talk about what a rational number is. A rational number is any number that can be written as a fraction. So we have this little wording here, n over d. These are just variables taking the place of numbers. So a number over another number, that's what we call a fraction. And we can't have a zero in the denominator of our fraction. So for example, any number that you can write in fraction form is what we call a rational number. So whole numbers like 2, we know that we can turn those into fractions by putting them over 1. So 2 over 1 would be a rational number. Same thing with negatives, like our integers that we just worked on. Same thing with decimals. Decimals can also be turned into fractions. So we're going to take a look at decimals first. We're going to talk about two types of decimals. We're going to talk about decimals that repeat, and then we're going to talk about decimals that terminate. So repeating decimals, let's look at first. So a repeating decimal is a decimal where a value or multiple values repeats over and over and over and over and over again. So we could think of this as like the number 0.3, and the 3's go on forever. 3, 3, 3, 3, they just keep going. Now when we write a repeating decimal, what we usually do is we put a bar over the number that repeats. So sometimes it's just a single number that repeats. Sometimes it's a pattern of numbers, like 0.25 repeated. That would mean 0.25, 25, 25, and that pattern just keeps going forever. Sometimes when we're looking at a repeating number, only the last value repeats, like 0.83, and we'd see just the bar over the 3. So that means what we have is 0.8. So the 8 would be behind the decimal, but after the 8, we would see 3's continuing on forever. So those 3's would just keep going. So that's what we call a repeating decimal. A terminating decimal is a decimal that terminates. Terminate is a big fancy word meaning it ends. So these are decimals like 0.5, right? 0.25, 0.7, right? The decimal eventually stops. 754. Doesn't matter how many digits there are as long as it stops at some point. So that is called a terminating decimal. So we're going to go over just a refresher on how to take a fraction and turn it into a decimal, and how to take a decimal and turn it into a fraction, those two skills. Now when we're going from fraction to decimal, sometimes there's values that you just have memorized. Like I think most of us have 1/2 is equal to 0.5. We all have those memorized. If it's a problem like that, perfect. I expect you to know those really common ones, 1/2, 1/4. But for all the rest of them, we're going to want to see some long division. So I expect to see long division on your work when you're working through the problems. Now, the biggest mistake that I often see is that we put the numbers in the wrong spot. So I have a little song to help you remember. I write the words in and out, which we can all remember because it's our favorite, or might be one of our favorite fast food places. So in and out, that's what division is all about. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to set up our long division problem. The numerator, the number on top, is going to go inside our long division, and the number on bottom goes outside. Now, hopefully we all noticed that this was an improper fraction, so this is going to be a value greater than 1. Now, once we set up our long division, we need to add a decimal point behind the number that's inside, and then we bring that decimal straight up. Now we're going to start to divide. Okay, 9 goes into 11 just one time, which is 1 times 9 is 9. We subtract and get 2. Now, we can see we didn't get 0, so that means we need to keep dividing. So we bring down a 0 as a placeholder. 9 goes into 20 2 times, which is 18. We subtract and we get 2. Oh my goodness, we got 2 again. We're going to keep dividing. Now, hopefully at this point, some of us are going, wait a minute. This is just going to keep going on and on and on and on forever. And yes, you are correct. These 2's are going to go on forever. So what we have here is our answer is a repeating decimal. So we would write that as 1.2 repeated. And we put the bar over the 2 to show that it's repeating. Okay, now let's look at going from decimal to fraction. Now, going from decimal to fraction, we are going to really focus on the numbers that are behind the decimal point. So, looking at this number here, we always want to look at our decimal point, and I like to just kind of highlight the numbers behind the decimal point. Those are the numbers that are going to turn into a fraction. We'll talk about that whole number in just a minute, but we're going to start with the numbers behind the decimal point. Now, this is where we need to remember place value. So we're thinking back to elementary school and our place value days, and we know that, in front of the decimal, we have the ones place, we have the tens place. Behind the decimal, we have the tenths place, we have the hundredths place, we have the thousandths place, and it keeps going. So the 7 is in the second place over, which would be the hundredths. That means our denominator will be 100. Then all we have to do is take the numbers that we see, and those go in our numerator. Now, it'd be nice if we were done there, but we do have to check and make sure it can't be simplified or reduced. So 37, luckily, is a prime number, so it cannot be reduced. But we're not quite done yet because we don't want to forget about that number in front of our decimal, right? This 5 right here. So what are we going to do with that 5? He becomes our whole number. He goes right in front. So our final answer is 5 37/100ths. Okay, well, what if we don't have a number in front of the decimal point? That's okay. We're going to do the process exactly the same. So again, I really focus on my decimal point. I like to highlight all the numbers that I see. This time I see 1, 2, 3. So tenths, hundredths. Now I'm here in the thousandths place. So that means when I make my fraction, my denominator is going to be 1,000. Then I take all the numbers that I see and I write those in the numerator. Now this time I can simplify. Notice how both of these are even. So that's always a good thing to check. If you're not sure the numbers are really big, check and see if they're even. If they're both even, then we can certainly simplify them. So we divide by 2 and we get 311 over 500. So today we're going to practice going back and forth from fraction to decimal, decimal to fraction.